Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Crub spoiler-casty type thing. We are talking about the Pokemon DLC Wave 2 for Scarlet and Violet, second part of the expansion pass, the Indigo Disk. If you missed our part 1, we did have a discussion on that where we said, man, we really hope part 2 pays off everything well. And, well, hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm great, Kevin. I've played Pokemon, and I'm as happy as a bee. I couldn't be more happy. Even if everything was better, I'm just as happy as I could be.
That sounds like you're depressed. Justin, how are you doing today?
Everything is misery, and I hate the fact that I played this Pokemon DLC.
Jesus.
Downer. It wasn't that bad. Hold on. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I think he's playing that up a little bit.
I felt like I had to counteract Chris's positivity.
Oh,
yeah, that's
okay.
fair.
Well, then that's fair. Keep being depressed then.
The general takeaway we had last time, in case you missed it, and you don't want to watch the discussion, which is a nice crisp 30 minutes, which hopefully this will be as well for you, was that we liked what it was doing, but it was kind of just more of Scarlet and Violet, and we were hoping for a little bit more by way of payoff, that a lot of the things it sets up story-wise were interesting, and that, following that up and seeing what they actually conclude the whole hidden treasure mystery, the thing they set up in the base game and then didn't quite pay off all the way, we were hoping that would be substantive. And we're still missing a chunk of the DLC because there's a final event that is supposedly coming that will maybe do a little bit more, but I'm going to say probably not based on what we got here. Chris, what are your general takeaways besides being happy?
Oh, well, that doesn't leave me much room to work with, Kevin.
Yeah, take that.
It's a rough one because, like we talked about last time, right? I think the base game, when it finally decides to have a plot, it does a lot of cool, interesting things. Mm-hmm. And I think it does them quite well. But it did leave some stuff hanging that I was really interested to see how they would cap off, right? And then we get to the DLC and it's like, okay, but what about these new characters? And then we have this little Japan plot. And then the next one is going to actually pay off the main game mystery. And then this seemed to focus more on the Kitakami characters than actually giving much care to doing anything interesting with the main game plot. It feels like an afterthought in a weird way, to where it's like, oh, yeah, right, we still have that Terapagos turtle and all that stuff to deal with. Oh, well, let's...
Yeah.
You just get to a point where it doesn't really satisfactorily conclude, in my opinion, the story with Kieran, and it doesn't really satisfactorily conclude the mysteries of the main game. So narratively, when it comes to this, I was left feeling like I wish they had just left the mystery and not even addressed any of that.
I kind of feel the same way. For those that maybe don't remember Kieran and Carmine were the brother-sister duo from the first DLC, where the brother's the little meek kid and the sister's the angry girl, and then they flip halfway through, and the brother becomes obsessed with this weird ogre Pokemon, and now he's this hyper-elite trainer who bullies people because he wants to beat your character specifically in a battle because you stole everything from him somehow by catching a Pokemon. And
he has the unfortunate hopes of being a main character when he's destined to be a side DLC character.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate.
Justin, what are your less negative general takeaways than everything being bad?
So I feel like they kind of touched on everything that they wanted, that they left hanging, but didn't really finish anything they left hanging. They kind of half-assed a lot of it. And
Scarlet and Violet half-assing things? No,
couldn't be.
Never.
Because like you do get a conclusion to the stuff going on in Area Zero, kind of. You get a conclusion.
But
that's what I'm saying. Like, but kind of.
It's like they wrote the end.
Yeah.
And that's the conclusion.
And the conclusion is we're not writing one. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And the conclusion to Kieran's story is a little bit more substantive, but it's a question of whether or not you like it. I thought the moments that they got in terms of like the fully animated moments that Kieran got at the end of the game were actually really cool, and something that a lot of Pokemon games don't get to do a lot, but it ends up being very shallow at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was...
Hey, don't bully people.
Well, it's not even like a bullying thing as much. Like, so let's jump back really quick. The mystery of Area Zero was the thing they didn't really fully address in the base game because there was DLC coming, and it was what led to the paradox happening There are paradox Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet because the professor from either game goes either to the past or future and pulls Pokemon from then, and we don't know how they figured it out, and we don't know, other than there being a book that somehow exists that informs the professor of what these Pokemon are and points them in the direction of here's how we find them. We don't understand who made that happen. And in the DLC, we do, but man, it is just the most boring answer possible. And I hate to dunk on them for going for the obvious answer.
It was us.
It was us all along. We started the paradox.
It's our fault they died.
Yeah, so a quick wrap-up version of it is apparently Terapagos, this mysterious giant turtle thing, isn't really a substantive Pokemon either. It's just kind of another Pokemon that exists, and it happens to have time travel powers for some reason, like every other Pokemon that can time travel. But this one can time travel to a specific point using only Terra Crystal shards. So Kitakami relates to the main game because there are Terra Crystals in Kitakami, and this new DLC... And this new DLC relates to it because in Unova, the Gen 5 region, they just said, hey, we have America's military, so we just synthesized that shit. And that's how that works. So
they made a disco ball of crystal energy.
Basically, they took the crystals from Paldea and the water from Kitakami, put it into a ball, slosh it all together, and now you can Terra.
It's literally a disco ball.
Yeah.
And so the way that they wrap things up is that this turtle that we've been hyping up as potentially like the god of the paradox Pokemon, maybe the creator of all again, like another god Pokemon, is just a turtle. And it's one of maybe many turtles that just got trapped during tectonic plate movements in Terra Crystals or whatever. And it concludes with the book that is being written by a character in the modern day is the book that we give to the professor when we meet them in a weird meeting of fate because they're teleported into the past or future to meet us. And we give them the book, and that tells them, go look in the past or future for these Pokemon. You'll find them there. And then that's how they then die. So we killed that one kid's mom or dad.
Good
if
job,
that
team.
sounds like a very non-Pokemon story, yeah. I don't know that I have many more thoughts on the story beyond, man, it would have been really cool if they did what they were setting up, which was the whole quest for treasure or power or obsessions that follows the entire story of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Like the whole original game is figure out what the treasure is that you want to find in Paldea, and I liked the idea of the paradox Pokemon not just being a regular paradox, but instead being it's a paradox because Terapagos is like a dream catcher type thing. So it sees what you're envisioning, so the professor looking at the book and seeing pictures of these Pokemon, they envision them that way, and then those Pokemon are generated exactly that way. Mm-hmm. That's not what happened. These are just old or new Pokemon, and that's it.
And they
different
are actually
timelines?
So they said different timelines. I don't know that they are different timelines, though, because the professor's talking about all these different, I went to other dimensions, but the book kind of says, just look straight ahead or back. Like, I think the idea was the professor was looking at alternate dimensions, a la Gen 7 stuff, and then the book says, no, you don't even have to do that. And that's what tells them to just look in the past or future.
Yeah.
They don't really explain it, and I don't know that we should really give it too much more time because they didn't either. But I wanted to explain it for those that maybe haven't played it because we did spoil the first part of the DLC already in the first discussion, and it turns out none of it mattered. So that's pretty cool.
It's just so strange that they brought all the pieces to that table. Like you said, Terapagos from above is a dreamcatcher when it's in its Terra state, right?
Yeah.
And like, this is the most logical answer, and it does mostly do everything cleanly, right? Like, it's not a wrong way they went. It's just...
No.
It's just like theming that they didn't even deliver on is the weird thing. Like, why put those pieces in and then be like,
Well, and actually, let me hit on one more thing. It's also that it's such a half-assed story within the plot of this DLC, 1 and 2, because 1 just says, go to this new area in Japan and go on a field trip. And you go on a field trip and you do something completely unrelated, except that there are Terra Crystals there. Then you go to part 2 of the DLC where they say, go to this school in Unova and this school happens to have Terra crystals, so that's why it's related, I guess. But it's not really related. You just kind of go and do stuff and fight an Elite Four of kids, and then as soon as you beat Kieran, he suddenly becomes a meek little boy again instead of this angry, edgy kid. And they immediately say, oh, hey, go to Area Zero now with your unstable friends. Not the ones that you went with during the base game that we know are strong enough that live there and know what they're in for. Mm-hmm. These random people. And so you take them, fly them across the world back to Spain, go underground, and you just get a linear hallway extension of Area Zero, which is very antithetical to the design of this game, to have an area that's just, you have to go this way, and it's very guided, and that's kind of what a lot of the DLC's story was compared to the base game. Mm-hmm. So it felt a little weird, but
I feel like I didn't even get a satisfying conclusion for Kieran either, right? Like, you beat him in a battle, and then he still tries to act out, but he is meek, and then everyone just calls him on it every time he tries to act out again.
Yeah, like he gets slapped back into shape, and then he's just that kid again.
Then he helps you fight Tropicos, when I thought they were setting up a, like, oh my god, the villain, like, is using the legendary Pokemon against you kind of thing, and it's like powering him up. No, he helps you. And I was like, I don't even really fully get the arc, whereas at least in part one, I kind of like the dynamics. So I was like,
yeah, okay. Like Kieran catches Terapagos with a Master Ball, and that's cool because then later on once you Terra in front of Terapagos, it becomes a different, more powerful Pokemon and almost kills everything, and then destroys that Master Ball, and then you just catch him anyway. So it's weird. It's just like your guy is the Pokemon Whisperer, and every Pokemon that ever sees him is like, I want that guy, which is usually how these games are anyway, so I'm not knocking that, you know. Mm-hmm. But it felt like they went for so much more, and then they didn't walk back. They just kind of decided not. Yeah, exactly. So that's the story of it. Justin, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I thought that moment in the cave where Kieran's going crazy because he's like, this is the Pokemon. This will finally let me beat the main character that you're playing as. Like, this will finally let me do it. And then the teacher's like, all right, Kieran, rip that thing right out of its socket and start making it go, baby.
And then they don't even really explain her much. Like Briar.
She's just the descendant of the person who either wrote the Scarlet or the Violet book.
Yeah. But there's no reason for them to exist otherwise.
That then goes back in time.
Mm-hmm.
But then Kieran releases Terapagos. Terapagos like gains consciousness basically. He sees your character and he's like, ooh, that guy's cool. I want to go hang out with them. And then Kieran's like, no, not again, and throws the Master Ball. And I was like, that's actually a pretty cool thing. If they can like follow up with that and make that a bigger moment than it is, then that'd be really cool. But then you just beat him in a fight. And then Kieran's like, what do you mean I didn't win? I had Terapagos. And then tries to Terra it, and then
I had this Pokemon that I don't know its moves, but I'm going to be its trainer and win in a 1v6 fight. That'll happen. Like, it's so weird. And
they have a lot of opportunity. Stuff I would typically expect from a Pokemon narrative, so I'm like, fine. But just the strength of the base game's conclusion really had me thinking like they might be onto something more this time.
Yeah, like that's that last quarter of Scarlet and Violet is maybe some of the most interesting Pokemon stuff they've ever done.
Yeah,
and
actually,
for them to just kind of wrap it up so neatly feels like such a disservice to a game that pretty much only had its story. So now it's just kind of a, hey, this game runs like shit. And speaking of, still does.
Yeah.
So the new area is just like the other two areas, both Paldea and Kitakami, the first DLC area, in that it's a big circle island with some random regions that are very closely put next to one another and are wildly different biomes. This one they kind of explain because there are these weird Minecraft blocks in the middle of the island that separate each section. They don't explain how you can put the ice area next to the coast and have them have different climates when they're literally next to each other. They don't explain that at all. It's fine. I get it. Whatever. But there's four areas. There's like 200 new Pokemon in terms of 240 new Pokemon that haven't appeared in the base game, or the dex is 240, so like 170 new Pokemon in this one, which is pretty substantial. Altogether, there are something like, I want to say 700 or 800 Pokemon, unique Pokemon in this game now with the DLC, which is kind of rad.
Pretty good.
And they're still adding more?
Yeah, but the area is just kind of more of the same, fly over everything, and you already have all your powers because this is a post-game game DLC. And yeah, it's just kind of more, and I really wish there was level design in this game ever. Chris, what do you think about the level design of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC?
It's an interesting one. Savannah's flat. Savannah's flat. That's what I wanted to say. Flat. So, that's 1/4 of the new area already kind of knocked out, right? It's cool to see in Africa region, but it's flat. There's Pride Rock for some reason. Coastal is fine. Flat. There's a lot of ocean in the main game, so I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. The ice stuff is fine, but it leads to a Chargestone cave urn, not Chargestone cavern. And it's like actually probably the most involved cave system in modern Pokemon, which is a weird sentence to have to make, but that's where we're at with the series at the moment. But there's no reason to ever really go in and explore any of it, so you're just kind of going around and seeing the same 8 to 9 different Pokemon and going like, okay. And then the canyon area is just, I don't enjoy interfacing with it because it's all just verticals, right?
Yeah.
And climbing in this game, until you get the flying power later, like the climb is just my least favorite thing to do in the game, so I didn't like that area. So like in a weird way, I guess now that I've said it out loud, I actually didn't like it that much, but it felt exciting at first, I guess.
I just thought it was exciting being able to walk around this area and just find new Pokemon again. That's really all I needed.
Yeah.
It would have been
reinforced the strength of the base game where it is just fun to go find Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just walking around Savannah, you're like, ooh, a Trapinch. That's new. I didn't see that. Ooh, Rhyhorn. Doduo. Yeah. Venonat. That was there.
I found myself, the more that I played this DLC and thought about it, the more I'm like, man, I'd like to play Legends Arceus again, but new. Because that game does that same thing where it's, hey, look at all these new Pokemon, but they put them in specific parts of the biome properly. Like, the only time you find Pokemon that are in specific parts of this DLC are in the technically post-game, because you can catch all the starters from every other game once you spend the in-game quest points, which we'll talk about in a second. Because that's actually the one cool thing they added from this DLC, and they still made it kind of tedious. But there are 2 specific Pokemon, which are, what's the name? Cyndaquil and Torchic. Those 2 are in 1 cave each, and that's it. Every other Pokemon from this DLC you will find anywhere in the biome pretty much without fail.
They're like hotspots, but you can find them anywhere.
As opposed to like Legends Arceus, where they went out of their way to make specific Pokemon appear in specific like little hubs of the biome, and that was only where you found them, and you knew where to find them because they kind of left hints. Here, there is not really any of that. It's just kind of so rote. And the more that I thought about it, like when I was exploring the polar area, I was like, man, I have distinct memories of certain parts of the polar area in Arceus. I don't have any of that of any part of Scarlet and Violet's base game, because there's no incentive to explore anywhere, because the only rewards you ever get are Pokemon that you'll probably find somewhere else anyway, because they're everywhere. You can just find random... You can find an Eevee on a mountain somewhere, and then also in a cave, and then also in town. It doesn't really matter. So there's not really any incentive to explore when that's all you get, and a bunch of loot. Like, you get random TMs sometimes, but they always respawn and they're random, and you get little stars on the ground where you pick things up, and it's, oh, that's an item that I'm never going to need until the final part of the DLC where you can just play a gacha game with it.
Right.
I don't know. The more that I played this, the more I was like, man, there's nothing memorable about Paldea at all. And I'm really sad by that, because there's so much world in Paldea. Like, Chris, we were last night. The post-game quest of this DLC has you going through and finding, using just hints in Paldea, legendary Pokemon from all the other games. And it's really cool. Like, it's like, oh, I was exploring the mine systems, and I found this Pokemon over here. That's where he probably is. Go find him. And you go back and you can find him. I flew over that mining system, and I was like, I was in here for maybe 15 minutes of the entirety of that game, because it's never used. There's an entire massive mining plateau system that is just not touched in the game whatsoever, because all the Pokemon can be found somewhere else.
It feels like the kind of thing where there should have been some character to be like, I'm a miner. I do the mine stuff. I have a weird side quest, and I need you to go look in the mines and find something I lost because I'm too stupid to get it myself. It feels like there should be something like that for areas.
If this game
like that.
had like shitty little side quests, like actually Arceus has, that would go a really long way towards making this feel less like an MMO world without a game. Because that's what it is.
I feel like if they almost just had like Skyrim quests, I feel like I would really like that, where you're just walking around the world and then you stumble across a quest line and you end up on this like whole adventure, but they'll never do that. Because
no, you say they'll never do that. Arceus did that. There were like 117 quests in Arceus.
Well, yeah, but like it was
and
just
there
like,
were random
hey, go
characters.
find a Pokemon.
Yeah, but this doesn't have that.
That's
Like this doesn't even have.
It doesn't
that.
even have that.
Yeah, like they had the infrastructure set up 10 months before this game came out, and they just didn't
do it.
And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, there's that, and then there's also in that whole quest line, what I think you were shaking your head at earlier, Chris, was I was in a cave looking for Groudon for about 10-15 minutes. It turns out I just hadn't moved close enough to him because he only spawns when you're 5 feet away from him. I'm not exaggerating.
For Groudon, a huge Pokemon. He's just like 7 feet tall, standing in a weird little corner. But it was getting to a point where it's like I could tell Kevin was in the right area, so I went to YouTube and I was like, I'm just going to spoil it for him. Like, you just haven't moved far enough into a corner for him to go boop.
Yeah, like there's no fade in and fade out still. It just
like, it's Groudon. Like, you should be able to see that thing from like the other side of the cave, right? But
there was too much in that cave apparently, where there's nothing in the cave.
Continent Pokemon.
I went and like looked at NPCs after we got off call, just to see like how close do you have to get for them to spawn. The answer was way farther. You can see trainers and stuff from quite a ways away, but Groudon, no.
It depends on the biome you're in also. Like I saw some of the other legendaries from very far away, but because that cave was an interior, I guess it had to generate more things or something. And like there's so much going on in that cave, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. Like there's a lot of Pokemon that spawn in that cave. They just all spawn really close to you. Yeah. And I'm assuming that the game also has to account for Pokemon that haven't spawned physically, because we've seen this in this game where you can go into a Pokemon without knowing it's there, and then it will suddenly appear and you're already in a fight before it spawns. Mm-hmm. So it's accounting for things that you can't even see yet. So it's kind of hard to do on the Switch when there's not too much power on that thing.
It really becomes a question at a certain point of how is it the Switch really giving it as many problems as it is, or is it just them being bad at making a game?
You can look at Xenoblade or Tears of the Kingdom, obviously one very, very high budget game, and Xenoblade, which is a game made by the same team who makes the world of the Zelda games, and they do it just fine.
And they helped with this, didn't they?
No.
That's right, it's only Pokemon.
Yeah, Pokemon's isolated from everything else for some reason. If you had the Xenoblade team making a Pokemon world, we would not have one texture on an entire mountainside. Mm-hmm. It would look pretty okay.
And it wouldn't warp as you walk up to it.
Yeah. It's the ability to fly also kind of broke this game. Like, I like the flying ability. It makes it very like you can just, instead of gliding, your ride Pokemon can just fly forever now, and that's very helpful for skipping all the tedious stuff of the game now that you're in post game of everything. But also, like Chris, you were flying over the water, and we found out the clouds that hover over the water, like the little foggy clouds, are a PNG. So they all rotate.
Great.
They rotate
at the same time.
You.
Yeah, it's very PS1. And I don't think we want to just dunk on this DLC or this game, because we all put a lot of time into it. We all played it a ton. We all enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think the most played game on the Switch. They had the wrap up for 2023. Yeah. This is the game that I played the most on the Switch.
Yeah.
I don't want to say my hour count, but it is bad.
Like, I don't feel good about having put 100 something hours into the game, but I enjoyed what I played with it. It's just that a lot of it is also, man, look at this shit. Like, I feel bad that a lot of the enjoyment is looking at, hey, this is the #1 media franchise of all time.
Let's talk about some positives then, baby.
Yeah.
Two big positives.
Really cool.
Sorry, you go.
There's a lot of really cool character interactions. I think they've done a good job. Like in the DLC, like for the main story, when I was like, oh, whatever, right, with all the stuff going on, I at least enjoyed like Drayden's grandson, Drayton, just going around and being like a bit of an asshole idiot kind of character who just doesn't care about what's going on. I thought he was funnily written. You can go back to your club and invite adults to hang out with you and talk, and there's all kinds of fun character dialogue with all the gym leaders and stuff. That's cool.
There's a lot of really good dialogue.
Just like a year or two. Oh, sorry.
My two big ones. My two big ones were they've made the entire DLC double battles, and each battle that you do is actually like competitively viable teams for some reason. And they really decided to just crank it and be like, you know what? If you don't know how to do double battles, you're just going to get rocked. Like I was, you could just use level 100s because you probably have them already because it's post game, and you could probably just steamroll everything. But I went in and I used only Pokemon that you could find in the terrarium, and I built a team and I gave them all items and I had to level them all up again because I just caught them. So I had to level everything up and like actually make a team. And it was so much fun going through and fighting all these trainers. Like I actually lost my first one because I was just like, oh, you're running like Expert Belt, Terra Fairy, Excadrill, and you're faster than all my Pokemon, so you can just hit Earthquake and kill everything. And because now you're a Fairy type, I can't use Fighting type against you.
Even with level 100s, like I was rocked a fair bit by some of the fights, like that Kieran battle, the final one before Tropicos, like he had me on the ropes down to like one Pokemon max reviving someone else to come back in and try and save my ass. Like I steamrolled the firefight just because I accidentally brought like a water absorbed Clodsire, and then oh shoot, what's the bird? Cramorant. I brought him, so he was above the earthquake, and then he would just soak up the surf. I didn't even intend for that, so I kind of walked all over that fight. But otherwise, like I got the challenge I was kind of hoping for out of a Pokemon game.
Yeah, they put a lot of effort into making the actual battling fun, and thankfully for some reason the battles themselves ran at a better frame rate this time than double battles in the base game.
Yeah.
Like
really
so they optimized
strange.
it at least a little bit, thank God. I was going to say earlier, the dialogue is very, very good in this DLC. There's a lot of contextual dialogue, like the thing that you are asked at the end of the base game where it's which was your favorite gym leader, that comes back. Like whatever gym leader that is, when you summon them as like guest coaches for the Unova school, they will talk to you and be like, oh, you said I was your favorite. Why is that? And you can kind of tell them, and it's kind of cool. You can trade with all the gym leaders afterwards. Like there's some really cool stuff with that. But even stuff like at least the localization was self-referential, where the one guy, the cooking Elite Four member, asks you to make him a spicy sandwich. And that's kind of cool because you have to use your intuition to figure out which ingredients you have to use to make the sandwich as spicy as possible in this specific area. You can't use outside ingredients.
Yeah.
And then if you make a sandwich like you did at any point in the game where it's a weird physics engine thing where all the meat falls off the sandwich as soon as you drop the bread on it, there's a running joke within the Pokemon community that you don't use the top piece of bread because it ruins the sandwich. He comments on that. He's like, kind of weird you didn't use that top piece. Maybe that's a Paldea thing. And I'm like, okay, there's stuff like that they acknowledge. Like, again, at least the localization acknowledges, yeah, this game's kind of shit. And I like that it poked fun at itself. I like that they were aware of it at the very least. They weren't saying, oh, or even at the very start of the game, of the DLC, they show you the 4 regions in the biomes of this little terrarium area, and it is the shittiest thing you can possibly imagine. Like I'm not dunking on this here. Like the water pops in a second late. It's glitching constantly as they're doing these flyovers of each area, and they show you this, and then the person that's telling you like, oh, this is the area, she goes, oh, we spent a lot of time on this. I hope you like it. And it's like, Jesus, like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That almost makes it worse.
I hope the contextual dialogue stays going forward, like, and I hope they just keep expanding on it, right? Because like a lot of people have noted, like if you use Ogerpon in the fight against Kieran, like it cuts to him like freaking out and being pissed off. It's like you're rubbing it in, you're using Ogerpon against me, and just like running through his hair and shit. I'm like, that's good, and I want a lot more of that going forward from Pokemon.
Like
just
that,
because
if you're sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say if you're gonna keep the games at this level of visual fidelity, at least give it charm again.
Yeah.
And I think Paldea in general had that charm factor when you did interact with characters. Like obviously the random battles didn't matter much. They were just kind of there. But the actual, like Nimona is one of my favorite rivals personally. I think that there was something awesome about that character. There's something really good about Arven as the time goes on. And it's really great that they're not in this DLC at all.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that they're not there until you invite them at the end of the game, right?
They're not there even then. That's all part of the post game, that final Pokemon event.
Oh, they're not even in the game yet.
Nope. Turns out.
Oh, great! I love it.
So that's to come apparently, and there's maybe something of substance there. It sounds like, which would be cool if there's like a final get all the friends together thing, because that's all I really want at this point. Like all those characters were cool. I want to see them again. There was some of that with Team Star as well. There was a post-game Team Star DLC quest of some sort.
Oh, that's cool. There was also that at the end of the completing the paradox, when you meet Professor either Sada or Turo, whichever one is in your game, you get they give you their copy of the Scarlet or Violet book with their name on it and stuff. I thought that if I went and found Arvin in the world with that book, it would unlock another like contextual story beat, kind of like how bringing Terapagos to the pool in Kitakami did. No.
He just says, "Oh, cool book."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not my parents, right? Nah, couldn't be.
Like, you can't tell him that you accidentally started the paradox that killed his mom or dad. You can't tell him that. Not that you probably should, but it'd be cool. It'd be cool if that character got more story, considering he's such an important part of the story, and they just kind of say, "Oh yeah, that he's just kind of there."
Main
he's with his
character
boss
syndrome.
stuff now.
It's all about you, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dialogue I really enjoyed. A lot of the writing I enjoyed. The characters they did bring back, I think, were very strong. You know, like there's some element of why does Carmine hate Drayton so much? We don't really see, like, he's kind of manipulative, but it felt like he was going to be the true villain, and then he never was. He's just kind of a kid. Like, he's a kid who's looking out for Kieran. Like, he's like, I want Kieran to have fun again, but he manipulates you into doing it for some reason. Like,
Weird
I don't
character.
know.
I really hope if they make those Gen 5 remakes that they're very clearly hinting at that something in the Blueberry Isle or the Blueberry University or whatever actually gets referenced in those remakes.
Oh, it'll be referenced for sure. The question is whether they'll go full hog and say that the Gen 5 remakes have Terratyping. Because Terratyping seems to be very popular within the community from what I've seen. So I could see them keeping that longer. You know, like obviously the Gen 3 remakes had Mega Evolutions in it, so I could see them carrying it one more go before they drop it inevitably.
They just can't bring Shedinja into a Terra-type meta because of Wonder Guard.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what they'll do, because BDSP didn't have any Gigantamax stuff, right? So I'm not sure if like that was just a weird one-off or if we're just out of that flow now. Very curious to see what they do there.
That might be in part because of that being an outsourced game also.
It makes me wonder then if the next remake's outsourced again.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, with how much they referenced Unova in Arceus, it seems like they really want to do it themselves, maybe, because they outright didn't do the remakes of the generation that Arceus is based on, because they were making Arceus to reference Unova as much as they did Sinnoh, which is interesting.
What's going on with Ingo? Like, is he going to be a reference in the Gen 5 remakes that happen? Like, is all that stuff in Arceus going to be referenced? Like,
yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens with the Gen 5 remakes, as if they really drop the ball on those, I'm going to be very disappointed.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Legends Unova game instead and an outsourced remake set. That could be it as well.
That could be it.
Though that would then drop Terra entirely, probably. So that'd be kind of a shame because, do we have any further thoughts that we haven't touched on of this DLC? Because most of it is, I had fun, but man, look at all this, for me, at least.
That's kind of the epitome of this game, really.
Yeah.
They really have found a fun new way of making Pokemon. Instead of going the super, super linear route, it's just kind of linear. And they kind of just need to get over that last hurdle of being Pokemon, in my opinion.
I wouldn't even say it's kind of linear. I want there to be kind of linear in the next Pokemon game. Like,
no, if you're gonna do what we're doing here, make it less linear and just actually do level scaling between gyms.
I mean, there's that, but that's more of a fundamental game design issue than a linear issue. Because you can still do it in whatever order you want. And this one, the DLC did level scale in part 1, so they have acknowledged that as a thing that needs to exist. What I'm saying is, none of these areas ever matter because you can fly over most of them. So there's no reason to engage with any of them because they have designed them in such a way that even the design philosophy is most players won't actually engage with this. Therefore, we're not going to make anything of substance here. There's no hidden specialty item at the end of a cave because it's just a cave. Every cave you can fly over in this game. You don't need to go into any of them. And that's true for the DLC as well, because at that point you can just go over everything. Arceus did open linearity in a way that was interesting in that it was level gated, it was level scaled, which this game doesn't really do. And that's what makes it kind of... That's what I want out of the next game, if anything, is I want there it's sort of the same thing that people want with Zelda now, where they want the Breath of the Wild open air style, but they also want dungeons. I want linear routes as micro levels within this open world. I want it to be that, when you go into this forest, you do have to go in from one direction, even if that's stupid and doesn't make sense. It's Pokemon. It's not going to make sense. Mm-hmm. I want there to be some element of crafted design where there's actually a reward to going through something, instead of the reward being, you caught a bunch of stuff, but at a certain point, it's more rote than Arceus is, where you catch everything, because at least with that, there's a progression to catching things. Here, it is just you are filling your decks. There is no real substance to catching, and therefore, there's no real substance to, outside of the theme of finding your treasure in Paldea, whatever that might be. That's not really an excuse to make a lackluster game. You can't just say that and then say, that's the game.
Yeah. Like, I'm amazed in retrospect the Titans weren't end of like crafted dungeon type things, right? Like you just walk up and see Bombardier, or you just walk up and see your Dawn fan future past thing, right? They're just out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, well, what if I had to go through something and then that was like the boss at the end, right? Basic old school game design. I'm not proposing anything huge here. It's just I'm surprised it wasn't like that.
Or even like if I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, if we're gonna do the open Scarlet Violet style again, then like if I do poke around where there's nothing, I hope there's something. Like if it's just a character with charm, or some item reward that makes
quests.
It worth going off the beaten path quest. Just a reason to do things.
Honestly,
nice.
I kind of want it just to be more of an RPG and not a Pokemon game, if that makes sense. Like if it was more of an RPG, then it would be guided like a Xenoblade, instead of it being just go, and then there's still things you have to do on the path of going.
Yeah, I like it comes down to there are organic self-narrative moments in a game like Breath of the Wild, and there's no reason to compare these two other than they're both meant to be open air games, but that's what Pokemon's trying to be in this one. So for there to not be any organic moments of I look in the distance and I see a thing and I'm like, I want to go do that, that's a damning thing for this specific game, because I look in the distance and I say, that looks like shit. Like I never see, like I know there's nothing at the end of that tunnel. I know there's nothing at the end of that mountainside.
Or if I do see something, it's like, the windmills. I wonder what's going on up around there, right? I wonder if there's like some guy who's like, I've been tending to these windmills since I was a boy. You know, they're just there. There's nothing there. There's no one there. There's like a trainer you'll fight who's like, I go to school. Isn't that great?
Yeah, or like the Levincia, the city with the giant buildings, the realty buildings that are just there. Like in any other Pokemon game, we were just looking at this last night, Chris. I went there and read each of the signposts in front of those buildings. Everyone out there is just like, I'm doing big business. Like we gotta make sure we get on this call and sell these buildings or whatever. Like there's the most generic dialogue possible there. But then each building has a little plaque in front of it that says like, building number 1, and then to the right of it is 2, to the left of it is 3, to the right of it is 4, to the left of it is 5. So it's 5, 3, 1, 2, 4. That would be a code in some other Pokemon game to some hidden area, or like a Team Rocket base or something like that. That's just there. That's just what that game is. That's the biggest landmark in the game is just there.
Also, that other town that has all of the original sprites from the Gen 1 Pokemon games on the Game Boy. That's
that town that
all over
matter.
the town.
Yeah.
It's just theming.
Yeah. Why do they think...
the thing with the realty, I was just going to say, like, Nemona's parents work there, right? They own it or something.
Yeah.
An NPC doesn't even mention, like, our bosses are so great, or they're airheads, or they're never around. Like, there's not even...
You can't even tell Nemona that you met her parents in the DLC. There's none of that.
It's to the point where I've seen people online be like, are they even her parents? We don't actually even feel like we are sure of that.
They just kind of feel like it.
Yeah.
Basically, my entire encapsulation of the DLC and this game is 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. So many cool things you did. There's so many cool things that you did. This is the first time I've ever completed a Pokedex. You made it actually fun to go out and find Pokemon. But there's just so many things that are just missing that I'm like, it's just so obvious. When I just
my 2 favorite things of this DLC that I've realized because of this DLC are They don't know what bacon is. Game Freak doesn't know what bacon is. They're just giant bricks that look like the bricks in Alfornada, the town you were just talking about with the sprites. And I actually forget what B was. What were you saying a moment ago? Refresh my memory.
The 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. This is the first time I ever completed a Pokedex, but there are so many things missing. It's fun to go out and explore and find Pokemon, but it's not really...
Nope, I lost it. Chris.
There's a lot of new Pokemon to Shiny Hunt now. It's fun to do that in these games and click on a podcast because you can find them relatively quickly now, all things considered. So it's like, yeah, I'll chill. I'll catch up on YouTube and look. That's where most of my playtime comes from, I think.
The final thing I was going to say was
this is big.
The final 2 Pokemon that you get in this DLC are either of your game's new Paradox Pokemon, which are either Entei and Suicune or Cobalion and Terrakion. Mm. Yes.
Entei and Raikou. But yeah, close enough.
Entei and Raikou, sorry. Yep. They are just given to you when you complete the 200 of the Pokedex of the 242 in this Pokedex. They are just given to you via picture in Area 0, which means someone in Area 0 took pictures, which means that they were in the forbidden area to find pictures of these Pokemon and give them to a random lady from Japan. I don't know that there's anything more symbolic of my issues with the game than that level of we don't fucking care anymore. Like this whole thing we played up the entire game. Everyone can just go there now. Apparently, it's fine. Like
that was a rough.
It's
one
not even like
I really like
pictures.
I like Perrin a lot. I thought she was cool.
Yeah, me too.
But when you're using the Gen 2 Pokemon, where infamously you go find them and then they run off, and then this DLC you're going into Area 0 where the Paradox Pokemon are from, into a new part that no one's been to before, and like breaking things open that they could in theory be in and then escape from, and then you have to go find them.
Yeah, especially when there's a guy giving you hints of where Pokemon are, using exactly that. Like, and you could have made it a whole quest. It could have just been mini bosses.
Why they're there. Like,
they're just hanging out in this area that no one's supposed to go to. And then we also let these 2 unstable brother and sister into out of nowhere, and some random chick that doesn't have Pokemon, that she's just writing a book, and they're like, yeah, she can go.
And then there's a third version of those 2 other Pokemon, and they're only via raids. They're not actually in this world. They're just kind of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you're so close. You're so close. You've done such a good job with so many other things, but you just dropped the ball on so many obvious things.
I hate that we have to dunk on the game as much as we do, but there's just so much that every time that you go back and play it, you're like, man, this could almost be one of the best Pokemon games.
That's what I'm saying. It's just so
Putting
close.
aside everything else.
It's so close.
If you just gave that game, like Chris, you had said yesterday again, that if they had given Scarlet and Violet another year, which we know is very hard to do given the Pokemon machine that is running, except that the Pokemon company said they would, and that Game Freak is the one that's holding it back. But that's besides the point. If they had put Arceus out at the end of last year as like a fully finished game instead of a game that, it still kind of looks like shit, but it's a Switch game, a lot of them do nowadays, and it still looked good for what it was. It had thought to the design. Mm-hmm. Imagine if they had another year to work on Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah.
It could have been incredible, but they also didn't need to because it sold like the second most copies in the series history. So hey,
yeah,
what do you know?
That's the
We're
road.
just 3 guys on the internet yelling about it. Yeah,
I bought Sword and Shield secondhand, being like, "Oh man, I'm going to stick it to him," and then it sold like 32 million copies combined, and I was like, "Okay, cool, it doesn't matter." I guess my takeaways from Paldea will be like, Area 0 is pretty cool. I like a lot of the new Pokemon. I was pretty into the soundtrack. The act of going around and catching the Pokemon felt good. I like the characters, and I'll hang on to those things, right? But I was kind of joking last night to Kevin and or Justin, if you were still around, I forget. But like the remakes of this game, those might slap in 2037. There's a good framework for them to build on now.
You're not wrong.
If they pluck all the good stuff and then make the rest of the game more gooder. Oh man,
it's such a shame because this was such an area ripe for some really, really cool stuff. And having even not played Gen 8, I'm now like, I'll probably enjoy the next game whenever they come out. I'm back into it, but I'm into it in spite of what it is, not because of what it is.
Considering the things you said about this story, I cannot wait for you to see the Sword and Shield story and some of the ass pulls it does.
From what I know,
there
I
are
already
some
like
moments of just like sheer, why would you even put this to paper moments.
Yeah, from what I've already heard over the years, I have no hope for it story-wise going in. I'm just like, I don't care. I'm there for the Pokemon at that point. By the time I get to those games, I will be close to a complete Pokedex in Pokemon Home, and that's the only reason I'd be there at that point, is just to do the rest.
A lot of cool Pokemon in Galar. A lot of great designs.
The Pokemon design team has been doing a fantastic job as well. Can I just say that?
Yeah.
Really bang up job.
Yeah, all the Pokemon in the game, in the DLC, all of them are stellar.
Pokemon that came from this DLC too,
like
Hydrapple and Archaludon, and
given those are the only two, but yeah,
it's Hydrapple, Archaludon, and then it's Terrapagos itself,
and then the fourth one
that we haven't gotten yet, and the 4 paradoxes, but all of them all look good. I mean, the future ones are kind of basic, but I mean, they're just robot versions of the legendaries. It's fine.
Yeah. It's
well.
Yeah.
I guess
we did it.
We'll see each other in 2 months when they announce the next games.
Yeah, look forward to that. If you haven't already, even though we have been immensely critical, do hit the like button for more of these sorts of one-off discussions about games. Let us know what you thought about the Pokemon DLC if you did play it, because we were all much more positive as we were playing it, even though we were dunking on it, is the thing. Like, when we're talking about it in a critical lens, you can't ignore the facts.
I just remembered the second thing I wanted to talk about.
Yes.
I feel bad that I forgot about it the whole time. They actually added a reason for us to play in multiplayer.
That's what I was going to say. We never actually circled back to that. Yeah.
Yes. So, Chris, do you want to hit that really quick?
Yeah. Basically, there's just reasons to play together, but not together as hard, right? You can all be in one shared world and do these quests that are like, oh, go catch a Pokemon, go take a picture of a flying Pokemon, go, all get together and look in this 1/4 of the map for Ditto blocks, and work together and be like, oh, I found this one, right? There's like just enough there to where you can constantly be doing your own thing and then take a quick short break to be like, all right, I got this one. I'll make a sandwich. I'll hatch an egg. And it just encourages like playing together by giving you points and forces you to play together by locking some of the legendary unlocks to this mode.
Yes.
But I didn't mind because like, unless you don't have anyone to play with, then you have to join up with Reddit randos. Sorry to you if you're that person. That's unfortunate. But like, if you do have a group to play with, like, you get points quickly, and it's just, I don't know, it's nothing complicated or deep to it. It's just kind of fun to be like, all right, I'm gonna do my own thing and chat with the boys, and once in a while we'll get together and have to do a little quick 1 minute task.
We'll make a gigantic sandwich like Kevin has on his background.
Yeah, that's a sandwich. Oh, that's bacon. There's bacon there. There's rice.
Hold on,
there's tofu.
We're in the 3 persons, so I have to.
Oh right.
Hold on. On Kevin the fly here.
That's one of the things that they're called BBQs. They're called BBQs, blueberry quests, and one of the things is to go make a sandwich with more than 3 ingredients. So Kevin decided that we were all going to get together and make that
Jenga sandwich. It was a Jenga sandwich. So we would take each ingredient and drop it on top of the other one at a time, and whoever knocked it over lost.
I lost immediately.
Yeah, it was bad. I was gonna say something about the BBQs, which was they're sort of they're very rote quests, to use the word rote again. They're very like pick up 10 items off the ground, and it's like, hey, that's it's something. It's the framework for what multiplayer will look like in the next game, I have to assume. And hopefully in that one, there's no negative to playing in multiplayer, because the sad trade-off, again, if we do have to talk critically about it, is as fun as it was, the game runs worse in multiplayer.
It does. Like a fourth of the Pokemon, no matter if you're together or not. Yeah.
So
it's unfortunate if you want to like shiny hunt or something and just also hang with the boys, right? You have like so much lower chance. It's not even worth it.
But the act of being able to do things together, if you did that with like, I had said, for example, Chris, like the Yakuza 7 dungeons, if you had pre-generated shitty little dungeons, I wouldn't love them, but it's the same concept as like playing the same Diablo 2 map over and over again. It's the same idea as going through and doing raids in Destiny or whatever. Yeah. If you had those options for multiplayer, like it's something. You have Pokemon not Conquest. What's the MOBA?
Unite.
Unite.
Yeah. You have Pokemon Unite where you already have that dumb, weird top-down corner style. You could even just do something like that with the right bumper where you send Pokemon out in auto battle. That's a thing you could do.
I mean, imagine if you were in the game with one of your friends and you decided to go up against 2 of the Elite Four members in the DLC, and you were doing a double battle where you were controlling one Pokemon, your friend was controlling the other, and you had to like strategize with each other because there would be 12 Pokemon on the other side. Like, that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, it's definitely on their mind because the Sword and Shield DLC had like the group raid battle path.
That was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, the Dynamax Adventures, and this has this. And I'd like to see them keep pushing for it, right? It'd be cool if there were even quests like trade with your friend, battle with your friend, go to this place and do a thing together for a bit, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
There are only 10 quests. Like, there are 10 quests total. And
because that was the thing with the base game of Scarlet and Violet. I was like, man, it's really cool that you can like do these union circles and it doesn't really like stop you from doing anything in the game. You can just play with your friends. But there's no reason to do it because there's nothing for you to do with your friends. And
there's no penalty if you disconnect. Like, they made sure that the game doesn't just crash if you disconnect or anything. Like, you just keep playing in your own world.
Yeah,
so that's very important.
It's done a very good job of that, and I gotta give it props where it deserves it. But
if not for the Union Circle stuff, I never would have bought the game in the first place because it was you guys playing it together and dicking around and being like, "Oh, look how stupid that looks." Like, that's why I was like, "I'm in." Like, it's jank. I'm down with jank. I will always play jank.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're so close. We're so close.
It's right. It's right there if you give it the time.
There's promise. It's right there.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't want more years of this discourse. I hope the next game is more competent.
Even if the next one, like, the thing is, even if the next one is another Arceus type game, there's a lot they've learned from Arceus. There's a lot they've learned from this game. I have to think. The problem is now that if they're using the Arceus style of gameplay as a way to pad between releases, they're still making another full goddamn game. It's not like they're not saving time. They're not saving resources. There need to be more people that are working on these games. Like, that's the end of the day, is they need to acknowledge that you can't just be an indie studio with 50 people and make a full-ass Pokemon game anymore. It's not going to happen. And especially with the Switch 2 probably coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're probably going to be like a killer app for that. So.
Yeah. So hopefully we have many more nice things to say about the next one, or when the next one's announced. It's like, oh, look, it runs at a solid at least 30 frames per second. That'd be cool. I don't know. I hate sounding cynical, but it's hard not to be with this game.
Yeah, this one just does it for me.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Fingies.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, I'll play it. It's really, really fun. But goddamn, are there some issues, and I cannot turn a blind eye to them.
Yeah, play Cassette Beasts.
We should play Cassette Beasts.
You should. I've been telling you to.
Video game.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Like the video, subscribe to the video, listen to our podcast. Bye.